Now.
All right, so welcome everybody. Very lovely to have you on this Sunday, whatever time zone you're in. Welcome, and we're well on our way to creating a lovely community of women who are all engaged in Chevra Kadisha from literally all over the world. We have England, we have Israel, we have Chile, we have all over the United States and Canada, and looking to widen the net of women. We're sharing, we're giving each other chizuk, we're learning, we're growing, we're raising our practice, I believe. And so I hope that we continue to do that. The plan for today is to have 4 lovely women who have offered to speak to us about their orientation towards, or their feelings about doing taharas that are emotionally, physically, psychologically difficult, like how they approach it, how they think about it. And the goal really isn't that they have the key to it, is that we're all experiencing this. And for people to share, to feel comfortable to share with us how they think about it, I think is not only interesting, but hopefully we can learn from that. And we can think about things when we come across difficult taharas, which I had a very hard one a couple of days ago. So I'm curious to hear what people have to say. What I want to do is start with the Devar Torah. I asked my friend Chaya Parkov, who lives in Denver, to start us off with a short Devar Torah. Chaya is a licensed clinical social worker and a trained life coach. She started her journey becoming observant when she was in her mid-20s. And so now, so many years later, she continues to be a Jewish educator and a speaker. She's very passionate about Jewish women. And she's very sensitive to this field of Chevra Kadisha since her father died when she was 6 months old. And so she's had a lot of comfort from the Jewish tradition, the ability to comfort others. She served on the Chevra Kadisha in Dallas, Texas, and is now part of the Chevra Kadisha in Denver. So now I'm going to ask Chaya, please, to give us a short Devar Torah, please, to start us off.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. And it's really nice to be here with everybody. And humbled to be amongst such holy women. And let's see what comes out today. I have so many different thoughts that I wanted to share, and we'll see what ends up coming out. I was thinking a lot about this week's Parsha that we just had, Parsha Chukat, and mainly what was in preparation for this meeting today and gathering. Because we, some of the themes there, and I wanted to bring out 2 ideas. One is just the connection between women and water and us, and how what we do on the Chevra has, and what we're doing as this incredible network that Alyssa has facilitated. And I feel very connected to women all over the world now because of this, in this area. And it's really incredible. So just the power of women and water, and the power of the emunah that women have specifically. And then the other piece, because of the topic for today, which is hard taharas, and sometimes hard means emotionally hard, and sometimes they're just logistically hard, and trusting the process even when it's hard. So first of all, we know that Miriam, a lot happens in this part in the Parsha, but what I want to touch on is Miriam. We know Miriam dies in this Parsha, and we know that there's a connection between the water stopping and Miriam, right? That it was in her merit that the water flowed, and then because the water stopped, it caused a lot of upheaval for the Jewish people, and specifically for Moshe and Aaron. And just that power, that connection that we have to water. And water, we know that Torah, water is a euphemism for Torah, and that nourishes us. And the power of the Tahara, not just when we're alive, but specifically, when a person dies, that process that we go through of washing and then immersing in whichever way we do that, is just such a powerful theme between this world and the next world, which Alyssa had alluded when she just shared a little bit of information about me, just that link between this world and the next world. When you grow up not knowing that there is one, and your father dies when you're a baby, and then you find out that there is that's a very, very powerful thing. And then the other piece has to do with trusting Hashem even when it's hard. So I learned this week, and it's the source is the Mayim Beis HaShoeva by Rabbi Shimon Schwab. And I learned from my beloved teacher, Esther Wien, and I encourage anybody to listen to her if you haven't already listened. She's really phenomenal. And she gives an insight that her grandfather had as to why Moshe really struggled with the water. You know, Hashem said, you know, speak to the rock, and then you're going to make them drink. And making them drink was going to kind of select out the people that were ready to go into Eretz Yisrael, and those that were not and would not make it into the land. And Rabbi Schwab talks about that that Moshe was like, you know what? No, like they deserve to go in. So I'm not going to make them drink. And he just couldn't handle that tough decision, that tough love, in a sense, that Hashem was decreeing upon the people. And so that was one of the major problems that he had in doing that. And that obviously Moshe was on a very, very high level, and we're not saying Moshe did something wrong, you know, who are we to say that? But this idea of trusting Hashem, even when it really looks hard, even when it really looks difficult, and that we do that in the Chevra when it's logistically difficult, when it looks like the compassionate thing would do this, but we call the Rav and we ask for Das Torah and we do what we're supposed to do, even when it doesn't make sense to us. And I think that's the message that women have in general, and that we can take into our work in the Chevra, and really in our work as women of Klal Yisrael, holding us all together as we continue in this geula, in this galus, but eventually we will be redeemed, and we know that it's in the merit of the women. So thank you so much for letting me share that, and I'll turn it back over to you, Alyssa.
Wonderful,
Wonderful. Oh, there you go.
Thank you, Chaya. Thank you, Chaya. It's a very perfect Dvar Torah to segue us into our panel conversation for women, England, Silver Spring, Muncie, and LA. So we have a little bit of a range of where women are coming from. And our first panelist, thank you so much, is Lissy Morris in London. Lissy is a mother of 6 with 5 grandchildren, Kanei Nahara, essentially a homemaker, always busy on different committees, fundraising, coordinating events and programs for the shul, etc. She thinks of herself as a Talmidah of Diana Rebbitzin Ehrentrau, which I believe Rebbitzin Ehrentrau is on the line with us. Thank you for coming. She has been on the Chevra for over 11 years, and currently chairman of the United Synagogues Ladies Voluntary Chevra Kadisha, which has a membership of over 80 ladies. She's passionate about what we do and thrilled to have the opportunity to have a better understanding of the mitzvah we do at a higher level of covered hameis that we already have. So I will now turn it over to the lovely Lissy Morris in London.
Hi, Alyssa. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alyssa. Okay, how to cope with difficult taharas. Well, the first thing that came to mind when Alyssa asked me to speak on this topic was chocolate. But what else do we do when we're upset and need a bit of a pick-me-up? Either that or a strong cup of tea, but most of you wouldn't appreciate that. But on a more serious note, there are different types of difficult taharas, as Chaya said earlier. Obviously, there are the physical ones, difficult ones, where the nifteris has clearly suffered and died in discomfort, and it can be difficult to look at and deal with, and can leave you feeling guilty that perhaps your thoughts weren't as pure as they should have been during the tahara. And in these situations, we have to constantly reassure ourselves and our team that by doing what we're doing, however long it takes and how difficult it is to cleanse her and get her ready for Tchias HaMesim, we are giving her the ultimate respect, because we will not stop and we will keep on going until she is as ready as we can possibly get her. And there have been times when we've been unable to perform a full tahara because of the state of the body, flaking skin, open wounds, which makes you feel so sad and think, what could this poor lady have done? But she couldn't merit to have a full tahara. I've personally been left feeling very uncomfortable in this situation. And it's like we didn't do our job properly. We didn't do what we were meant to do. And when I discussed this with our Rav, he said to me, you sit down, you take out your Tehillim, you say a kapitel, particularly Tzadik Aleph, and you daven for her neshama to have an aliyah. Sadly, we've done taharas on babies, And the wonderful lady who trained me and told me everything I know about taharas told me to think about it as if you're tucking her in and laying her down to sleep, which was just such a peaceful way to approach it. And tragically, we've had to do taharas on ladies and girls who've taken their own lives, which is both physically difficult and emotionally so hard to handle. So how do I cope? Well, one thing which I like to do, especially when I'm leading, is at the end of the tahara, when the nefteris is dressed and ready to go in the aron, I like to pause, stop the team for a moment and just step back and reflect and take a look at how peaceful she is. Because I don't think that there has ever been a tahara, however difficult the tahara has been, there's never been a time when we haven't witnessed a transformation in the mace, not just physically, but you can feel the atmosphere in the room changing from being tense and heavy to a feeling of lightness and calm and serenity. And having learned recently with Rebbetzin Goslewski that the state of the guf is a reflection on the state of the neshama, this corroborates that feeling that we felt for a long time in the room. And now we didn't understand why, but we can actually understand that there is a high meaning to this. Another thing we do as a chevra on a practical level is that the leader will always phone the other ladies on the team later on in that day. To make sure they're okay and talk things over. Because obviously we never discuss any details outside the tahara room with anyone, but within the chevra, we can talk. And we're a large chevra, as Alyssa said, with over 80 active women, different ages and communities, but somehow we're still very close-knit. Many friendships have been formed from working together, and we've recently appointed one of our members, who's actually a bereavement counselor, to be available to speak to anyone on the chevra who needs to talk things out, because often a tahara or a situation arising during a tahara can trigger all sorts of other feelings, and having a professional to talk to can be very soothing. The most difficult time for us as a chevra, in my last 11 years, I think, was most recently during COVID. But let me explain a bit about our background at the United Synagogue. United Synagogue represents one of the largest communities, I think, in Europe. They service 62 shuls in communities all around London, and typically we will perform over 600 taharas a year. During the month of March last year, there was where the average would normally be around 70 levayas, there were 107. And in the month of April, there were a staggering 269 levayas. You can't imagine how the mortuary looked. They had to hire refrigerated vans to store the bodies until the levayas, and fresh graves were being dug every half an hour to accommodate an average of 15 funerals a day. The bodies had to be collected immediately from the hospitals, as there was a genuine fear that if the hospital morgues became full, they would send the bodies for burial elsewhere. The Chevra Kadisha were called in to work on second day Yom Tov on Pesach, as there was no way they could have coped with the backlog from another day. We were worried that our supply of earth from Eretz Yisrael would run out with so few people traveling and so many burials. So the Dayanim and the heads of the Burial Society, following medical and government advice at the time, made that excruciating decision not to do any taharas on anyone who died from COVID. Anyone who died from other causes during this period was only allowed an abridged tahara. As things calmed down, we were able to lay tachrichim over the body bags, which we did lovingly, tying every bow and placing earth as if we were dressing them like normal, and anyone looking down into the aron from above would never have known that there wasn't a body inside those tachrichim. During our second wave, which was just now, back January, February, after doing much more research and getting more advice, we were allowed to carry out taharas on COVID Mason with specific guidelines in place. This was for me, and I speak for many of my colleagues who I can see are online today, the more difficult than any physical taharism we have done. Not being able to bring these people to a proper kavura was heart-wrenching. At the same time, many of our members were shielding. Anyone over 70 was not allowed to work on the chevra, which left them terribly upset at being unable to perform their mitzvah. There were constantly people isolating, and at one point, there were fewer than a dozen members who were able to work. So how did we cope? Well, as the head of our chevra, I felt the need to find some sort of solace for the anguish that we were all feeling. And I found this when I remembered a share that Diane Andra had given us. And we learned a halacha that somebody who is murdered is buried without a tahara, since the manner of their death was a kapara in itself. They do not need our man-made interventions, as they go directly up to Shamayim. So too, in the time of a plague, or in our case, COVID, the manner of their terrible deaths so many of them dying alone with no family, was so tragic. These people did not need our earthly interventions. They were going right up to Shamayim. I sent that message out, and hopefully it helps us to try and understand. On a more practical level, we set up a WhatsApp group for the Chevra ladies, which created a sense of unity and camaraderie. And we would put the names of the ladies on whom we did perform taharas on, so that everyone could say Tehillim and thereby feel included in the mitzvah. We have a tradition that on the day of our Suda, in addition to fasting, a few representatives visit the graves of some of the ladies who we buried during the course of the year in order to ask for mechila and say some Tehillim. Last year, we asked all the ladies who'd been shielding and therefore unable to do taharas to go and visit the graves on our behalf. There were 87 graves visits in that day. As I said earlier, the physical difficulties we can come to terms with somehow, because somehow or other we will get that tahara done, and somehow or other we will clear our heads and deal with it, what we have witnessed. This is easier in a way than trying to understand why so many people had to be buried in a compromised way over the last year and a half, and we were not able to perform a mitzvah in the way that we wanted to. We know that Hashem has his ways, and we can only try to perform a mitzvah in the most respectful way possible, whilst keeping everyone around us safe. I pray, I daven, that we will never have to be challenged in this way again. Thank you for listening.
Amen. Wow. 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 Lissy, thank you so much. Well, there's a lot there. I feel like I want to listen to that again. New things like going to visit the cemetery and asking mechila at the keva. I never heard of that before. I'm sure there are other things that thank you. Really, I think we'll all need to think about what you do and how you do it, and try to see if we can incorporate some of those ideas. Thank you. Sounds like a lot. Our next presenter is my dear friend, Dr. Caroline Namaro. Caroline lives in Silver Spring, Maryland. She's originally from Leeds. She studied medicine at the University of Oxford, had clinical rotations in Manchester, and then qualified in pediatrics, specializing in pediatric emergency medicine in the United States. She lives in Silver Spring. She's there for everybody all the time. She's on volunteering and doing good. She didn't write this, I'm telling you this. And actually my son had the pleasure and honor of boarding at her house when he went to the Yeshiva of Greater Washington. And so I'm now gonna ask Caroline to please give her thoughts, please.
Thank you very much, Alyssa. That was very glowing. And thank you very much to Lisi. She's a very hard act to follow. I would also like to thank the Chevra Kadisha of Silver Spring, who I have the honor of volunteering with, and there's a woman in charge she's fabulous. I think that I put together some thoughts based on doing difficult things for the Chevra Kadisha, but also how my work life impacts me. So first of all, I feel that there is a power in relaxing on the way to do a tahara. So sometimes I drive alone to do a tahara, especially during COVID, we weren't carpooling. So during the car ride in, I try and focus. But sometimes being in the, before COVID, when we were allowed to be in cars with other women, I think being with the group, whether it was all the group or part of the group, that I felt that was very powerful. Just being with these other incredibly wonderful women gave me chizuk. But I do try and take the time before a tahara, and when I say take the time, and I do this before a shift as well, that I only need just a few seconds to focus my mind, and I'm going to use the phrase to center yourself, but basically I just say like a small prayer to myself, that Hashem should give me strength to deal with whatever comes my way, whether it's a work shift or during the tahara itself. And then during the tahara process, I feel that it's very important to focus that I'm focusing on the neshama, on the soul of the person who has passed, that everything I'm doing is for that neshama, that I don't want I really don't want any discomfort to show on my face. I think I also try and do that, you know, in my job. You know, unfortunately, I do see traumas, and sometimes they can be unpleasant, but it's very important to not show it externally. I do feel that the neshama is looking down, and even though inside sometimes you are feeling this is really hard, or this is disgusting, or whatever it is, it's not, I don't think it's bad to have those feelings, because we're human beings. That's okay. I think it's important just to try not to show it externally. And but I think it's okay to acknowledge that sometimes we do have these internal feelings, and Lisi mentioned that. I think that is a very good idea to have somebody to talk to. We don't actually have that in Silver Spring, at least not that I'm aware of, but I think that's a brilliant idea. I think that it's important to, the reason that I feel that it's important to stay calm externally is that you are giving hope to that person, to the neshama. One lesson I learned during my residency, my training, was I unfortunately had for example, a patient who I had to deliver the diagnosis to the mother that the child had cancer. And the mother really didn't know me. You know, she just came into the hospital, had all these tests, and I'm the point of contact. She really, it's not like I was her pediatrician for years and years and years. And I had to tell the mother. And I called the oncology fellow, and I was crying on the phone, saying this child has cancer, and I just lost it on the phone. And the fellow said, well, I'm coming down. I'll tell the mother, unless you want to tell the mother, but if you tell the mother, you cannot cry. If you cry, then that mother loses all hope. All hope. You have to pull yourself together. So before you tell her. So I was able to do that. And I felt that that was actually a life lesson. And I take that into the taharas as well. That if I look like I'm losing my control, my composure, how is the neshama going to feel? I have done a tahara on a friend, which I felt was extremely painful, and it was very, very difficult to keep my composure, and I did break down and cry, but during the tahara, and that wasn't pretty. It's not pretty, but I took a few deep breaths. And I centered myself again. I was like, no, I'm not, this is not about me. And yes, I miss her. It was terrible. But I did feel chizuk from the other women in the room, and I was able to continue. One thing that we do in the hospital is that we do a debrief afterwards, which I think Lisi mentioned that you do after you do difficult taharas. There is communication. So after a difficult tahara, I think like we do if it's difficult, if somebody comes in the ER and it's a loss, and they go to the ICU, we discuss with the ICU, you know, this is what we did, what can we do better? We don't always get a chance to do debriefs, but they are helpful. I think that is a very positive thing to do. And I think unfortunately, I was present when there was a murder in Silver Spring. The sniper, the DC sniper, I was actually present when somebody was murdered. I was at the gas station, and that also, again, completely threw me. Normally, when you're in the emergency room, people come in. You know, I get a call from the ambulance. This person's coming in, and this is the cause of the trauma. These are the symptoms the person's having. So we put on our gown, which is very similar to being in the tahara room. You know, you put your gown on and your gloves, and it's all very, you know, it's a process, and it's protecting us from things, physical things, but also mentally. Just as in the emergency room, it's a way of mentally preparing you for whatever onslaught comes. So when you're thrown by something, like when I was present when this person was unfortunately murdered, I didn't have any of that. And I was shaking, worst day, awful. So I was like, oh my gosh, I can't deal with this. And then for a few seconds, I had to take a deep breath and realize, wait a minute, you're a doctor, you can do this. And it's almost like an out-of-body experience. So there are times when you have to give yourself a pep talk. And I think again, you know, it's okay, we're all human. You can't do this like an automaton. We're not robots. But again, afterwards, you know, it is helpful to be able to talk to somebody to debrief. I don't think I have any other thoughts. I hope that everything I said was maybe perhaps a little bit helpful to people.
Yeah, it's great, Caroline. I mean, you know, the trauma of being present when somebody is sniped. I don't know if that's a verb. And you're at the gas station and you risk your life to go help this person. You know,
Right.
there's this giving that we're all doing, and some of it's at our own sacrifice. I think when Lisi was talking about, like, we want to give you this burial, we want you to have this, and we can't give it to you, it's so painful. Or we want to, like when you were describing wounds or so much blood. I had a woman come the other day for a tahara, and she had had an autopsy, and there was so much blood, and her head was open, and there was no way we could do the tahara. And it's so, like, I agree, I feel the same, Lisi, what you're describing, when you can't do what you want to do, and you want to give her this journey, this last, you know, tahara that she could get, and we can't give it to her. So that was very traumatic for me, I think. So Carolyn, yes, thank you. To debrief and to think and to say a prayer and to be with other people and realize that we're going to do this is what we're doing, and just like switch off and concentrate on what you're doing, and then debrief later. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. So our next presenter is Tova Hinda Siegel, who lives in LA. She is a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother of many. She's been a certified nurse midwife for over 30 years and delivered most of her grandchildren and one of her great-grandchildren. That's amazing. 20 years ago, she realized how intrinsically connected her work as a midwife is to the work of doing taharas. And since then, she has led a Lubavitcher women's Chevra Kadisha. She's a writer, a poet with a book coming out, a cellist, a gardener, very busy person living in LA. And I'm going to now hand over to Tova Hinda, please, for your reflections.
Hi. Okay. Well, that's who I am. So, and as Alyssa was saying, I started doing taharas because it just felt like such a logical extension of what I was already doing. As a midwife birthing babies, I'm helping to move the soul from one plane of existence to another plane of existence. And I saw taharas being the same thing, helping to move a soul from one plane of existence to another plane of existence. So I find myself being a midwife at both ends of life. As far as the topic goes, you know, I think all taharas are difficult simply because death is difficult. We have a little tradition in our group where we finish every tahara with what one of our friends calls a group hug. And what we do with that group hug is that we offer a fervent prayer that we should never have to do taharas again, that Mashiach should come and that we shouldn't have to ever do taharas. We tried to go and return in the same car because we do a little bit of a debrief, nothing formal, but we want to discuss as we're going what we're going to be faced with. And as we come back, what actually happened. You know, as somebody mentioned already, difficult has many meanings for different people. And my first tahara was difficult because it was my first. The first time I led a tahara was difficult because it was my first. And difficult, as somebody already mentioned, could be physical or emotional. Physical difficulties, which we've all come in contact with, the fragile skin. It's amazing. As soon as the neshama leaves the body, that body starts the process of decomposition. And we see that in our taharas. If somebody's especially had a tahara once where it was just myself and one other woman, and the woman was very, very heavy, and we needed to ask for help in order to move her into the aron. So we can ask for help as we need it in order to facilitate. Of course, always maintaining the modesty of the nifteris. Things like lots of tubes, devices, excretion, oozing sores. You know, we always are motivated by providing respect and, of course, working gently. I always tell people that I'm training, we don't want to hurt the woman. We want to make sure that we don't hurt her. And of course, the bottom line is the tachrichim have to be kept clean. So we end up doing things like diapers and tampons and Moncel solution and Weberil taped in place. as a midwife, I know how to suture, and I've actually sutured during taharas, places that refuse to stop bleeding. Physical difficulties can be colored by emotional difficulties. We have taken care of women who were in a car accident. One woman in particular was thrown quite a number of feet. And when she came to us, she literally was completely falling apart. And so we, in those kind of cases, we do little, if anything, at all. Everything very gentle. And even the pouring of water has to be done so carefully, so gently. And as someone else mentioned, we don't try and put the tahrikim on the mace at that point. We just lay the tahrikim on top. We've had bodies that have come to us when the woman has been found several days after she passed away. And as we had the exchange on I think it was the WhatsApp, that the odors and the whole difficulty of that, difficulties, maggots, really, or someone also mentioned after an autopsy, I don't know what other morgues are like, but in Los Angeles, they don't do a really good job of putting the body back together, and organs are visible, and all these things are extremely difficult for us. So how much more so is it difficult for the neshama? And so we always want to take care of that. Emotional difficulties, you know, doing a tahara on a baby. I birth babies, I don't bury babies. And so that was very, very difficult. And as somebody else mentioned as well, doing a tahara on a friend. Recently, I did a tahara on a friend of mine, we were friends for 40 years. And with everything that we do, every bit of the taharas, we always want to handle it the same way. You know, what I'm doing is chesed shel emes. So I focus on that. We focus on the spiritual aspects. We focus on the privilege that we've been offered to do this. We focus on techiyas hamesim. I focus on my act as a midwife. I'm midwifing this neshama. And there have been times actually where we've actually seen, after the tahara is done, a smile on the face of the mace, which is really extraordinary. So as a midwife, I focus on the birth that's taking place, and as a poet, I write afterwards. And with your permission, I'd like to read a poem that I wrote after I did the tahara on my friend. It's called Tahara for Chana. We begin, 4 women. Rabbeinu Shel Olam, Chamol al Hamesa, Master of the Universe, take pity on the present deceased. We continue, each word, each action, each movement infusing gentleness and care. Each touch carries deep respect. Each thought conveys dignity and honor. My memory floods. I sink into the many years. I hold the remembrance of the so many she's, the many holy times, the many moments of privilege of connecting me to all the she's to God, God to us all, touching all time, all space, forward and back. The journey begins long ago and goes on and on and on and on until it's time. But this afternoon, I perform this tahara, this sacred ritual, and recite these prayers for my friend. She died earlier today, my dearest Hannah, my friend for over 40 years. We taught together, we were pregnant together, we married off our children together, we laughed together, we danced together, we cried together, we prayed together, we quieted together. Now she is gone. How, why, not possible. Possible, too quick. It's time. Throughout the tahara, my hands are steady, but my heart, my kidneys, my stomach, my blood tremble. I wash her face. Rosh Kesempaz, her head is like the finest gold, and my face feels hot. I wash her arms, Yadav Glil Zahav. Her arms are like golden wheels, and my arms seem no longer mine. I wash her breasts, and my heart breaks. I wash her legs, Shkava Midei Shesh. Her thighs are like marble pillars, and my legs have dissolved. I've dissolved into her. The world has dissolved into the gauziness of suspended breath. I see her face now washed, her hair now combed, her eyes now closed. I am floating in unbreathable air, and still I ease her journey to the next space, the space here now empty of her. How odd is this thing of death. I feel her hand warm in mine, entwined. I hold it for the last time, soft. I don't want to let go, whispers, not yet, not time, not now, it's time. The waters rush over her. We pour and chant together. Tahorahi, Tahorahi, Tahorahi. She is pure, she is pure, she is pure. The final step, she is ready. White linen garments enrobe her. A white sheet enwraps her. A pine box envelops her. The final words are intoned. We stand next to her. Hanafreda, daughter of Moshe Bunim, Mirbetin Mechila for Alistan. I beg your forgiveness if anything I've done. Our years faded. Were we looking? What did we miss? Fast, so fast, too fast. It's time. So thank you, Alyssa.
We just have to sit with that for a minute, Tova Hinda. Thank you. Sure, it brings up a lot of our own feelings for experiences we've had, or people we've watched, or friends we've watched, people we've lost. It's a mixture, isn't it, of grief and experience and doing something, having something to do that feels holy or is holy and is elevating, and yet it's so hard. And I can only imagine her neshama was comforted having you in the room, taking care of her and washing her with such intention and such focused kavana that that's a bracha that you were able to give her.
Thank you, Alyssa.
That comforts you. Okay, we'll move on to our final, but not least, last but not least, Charlene Rubenstein. I would like everybody to, if you can, to stay for a little bit of conversation. It looks like we might have a few minutes at the end if people have some comments or thoughts they'd like to share. But I'm going to introduce my friend Charlene Rubenstein, who lives in Muncie, New York, but she is from Algeria. She grew up in France and studied at Gateshead, taught Judaic studies in New York, did French immersion in Montreal, made Aliyah, created a trilingual early childhood center in Jerusalem, and then returned to Muncie to marry her husband with his 4 children, his mother and 2 dogs. She stopped teaching after losing her hearing. I went back to school and became a licensed massage therapist doing healing work with Jewish mystical touch. She teaches challah. She actually came to Providence and did a great Rhode Island challah for me one year, a few years ago. And she's involved in Bikur Cholim and Chevra Kadisha. So now, Charlene, you are next in line. Please, I invite you to speak to us. You have to unmute yourself, please. Can you unmute yourself? On the bottom, the little microphone. I don't think I can do it for you.
Alyssa, I'm trying to do it. I'm just not seeing her name here. So
It's iPad. She's iPad.
oh, that would be why. iPad. Okay, I'm asking her to unmute. That should pop up.
Okay, can you do that?
There we go.
Why am I not on?
You're on.
You're good. We can hear you.
You can see me?
We can see you.
Yes.
and
I
hear
see
you.
myself in the screen. Is that a problem?
Nope.
I see myself in the corner of my screen. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. So first of all, hello to all the women, great women who do the work of Chevra Kadisha. Like רחל המשוררת, I would say, רק על עצמי יכולתי לדבר. I can only speak about myself, this experience of Chevra Kadisha. So one day I had 3 people in one day telling me, Charlene, you know, you'd be good doing the work of Chevra Kadisha. One of them was a Rosh of Muncie. My neighbor is a man, told me the same day. I said, okay, this is a sign. So what do I do next? So there was Rabbi Zahn, did a community talk in the community synagogue in Muncie. And he spoke about all the aspects of Chevra Kadisha, and I really was very inspired. The thing that's really touched me, and I want to share it with you, it's about the first murder of Cain and Hevel. And so when Hevel was lying on the ground, lifeless, I don't know if Cain realized that he killed his brother, but the parents went to look for him. and they found him prone on the field and they didn't know what to do, right? So this Hashem sent, the Midrash says, Rabbi Zon quoted the Midrash, that he sent to a bird and they saw a bird digging into the ground and burying their little dead bird and covering it on the ground. And they learned from the bird how to bury a person. So this is a story of a bird. I really understand at the end of my talk why I talk about it. But I have had a lot of difficulty in the very beginning. After that lecture, that was a Sunday, I got a call Monday morning to come to Chevra Kadisha. So I go to this place, and it was the most difficult situation I saw in my life. But it was also traumatizing for me because I lost my father to a car accident, and there was a lot of blood. I come there, this girl was in a car accident, and there was a lot of blood. And I'm going through, sorry to be emotional, I'm going through little hell because I have to learn on the spot what to do. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, somebody did that for my father, and somebody took care of him, so on and so forth. And I learned about the Dharma to be very respectful of every little aspect and to put it aside and be mindful and so on. So somebody mentioned a cup of tea before. It was funny because I was so eager to be on time. I left very early and I did not even have a little coffee. And it was the longest tahara I ever did in my life. It took an hour and a half to do the job. And I was like on an empty stomach. I had physical reaction to it. It was so difficult. I realized I'm even holding my breath. So I started breathing and just calming myself and, trying to learn from the women what to do and hearing the psukim the first time and seeing how everything is done with a certain order and a certain ritual. And it was for me a very big experience. But what I also thought of at the moment, as I married this man, Aryeh Rubinstein is an MD, and he worked a lot with AIDS. And the time of AIDS, there was this young boy in Muncie who died of AIDS because he got bad blood, and he was a hemophiliac, so he never could have a brit. So they asked my husband to come to Chevra Kadisha and take care of this child. Now, my husband is an MD. He's seen dead people. He's been in the war in Israel twice. It's not like a shock for him. But the shock for him was that this Sephardic lady, the mother, wanted her son to be circumcised. She wanted him to go with another mitzvah. So they asked my husband to circumcise this child with a stone, not a knife. And it was for my husband such a thing that he came home, he looked gray, literally, he looked gray. I said, what happened? And he told me his experience. He only did Chevra Kadisha in Monsey once in that difficult case, because the Chevra Kadisha didn't have the knowledge of how to be protected in those years, in 83, let's say 85, I don't remember exactly the year, but there was no preparation, the covering and the gown and all the personal protection. So he told the people what to do, how to do it, and he actually instituted this the things that you need to do to be safe, health-wise, and not to get contaminated. So that's because of this single tahara that he did. It was enable Muncie community tahara to learn and to be careful and to be protected, besides doing the mitzvah, to do it in a way that nobody gets hurt. So I was like, I never knew about any of that until I visited Ephraim Pessin, whose father passed away, and he called me at the Shiva and he told in front of everyone how because of my husband, the Chevra Kadisha improved a lot and the conditions are better, etc. When I went for that first Chevra Kadisha, I was also in shock because I saw there were bottles of wine, makeup, there was all kinds of things that apparently the Chevra Kadisha is used by non-Jews, and they drink while they work, I guess, or whatever they do, and they left all the paraphernalia hanging out there. And it was like, for me, it came from outside. I was so totally overwhelmed. And I had nobody to talk to. I did talk to my husband, but yes, it's true. We need a support system that we could talk to at least for the first time, so we can get chizuk, and get the good energy. But thank God to the lectures of Rabbi Golchevsky, I'm a different place now. And I just wanted to share something that another personal story. So I've been doing Chevra Kadisha for 20 years, and I've been with pretty much the same group of women. And sometimes we have the merit to even be, our husband be involved in coming by and saying Kaddish for a lonely elderly person who will be buried when nobody would be at the burial. They want to say one Kaddish, so we women call the husband and they call their friend, they make a little minyan and they accompany the body, the levaya part is done. And so we have another mitzvah to add to this neshama that is leaving us. And I tell you something, neshama is neshama. The woman who spoke before, the MD, says she takes breath. Neshima is neshama. It's the same thing. When I'm a massage therapist, I see these women who are very stressed, and I tell them, please don't enter the room yet. Put your pocketbook down, and I want you to take a deep breath. Before you enter, this place is a place of healing. I want you to take a deep breath. And then when they take one, I let them take another one, so that they can let go already half of the stuff out there and leave your worries by the door. Don't bring anything with you. So I feel the same way when I go to Chevra Kadisha. I take breath along the way while I drive, and I also ask Hashem to give me the strength, because strength is whatever I need. I ask Avinu Shebashamayim. I do it with the dut. I ask, give me strength for wherever I'm going. Give me strength, give me courage, give me whatever I need to fulfill this mitzvah. And so the most personal, so that was a physical aspect of this mitzvah that we do. It was a very physical, that first experience. I came home, I would share that with you. I came home, I stripped and I took a shower. I felt totally invaded, totally I felt like I wasn't pure. And we're all impure, right? I know that rationally, but I felt soiled. So I went and I just took the shower. I did what I needed to do for myself. And years later, 7 years ago, I had a niece who married my stepson. Her name was also Rubinstein. I know her. I knew her. I speak to her in the present. She passed away, but I know her since she was born. So we were very close. She was my niece. She left France like me. She came to America to build a life like me. And she was a beautiful human being. And she was unfortunately diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And she lived a very short life after that, maybe 8 months. She just wanted to make it to her son's bar mitzvah. She left a 2-year-old younger child, a little girl. And I took care of her for 8 months when she was sick. Every day I would go to Westchester, take care of her, lovingly and caring and so on. And when she passed away, I found out they were going to carry her to Williamsburg because a rabbi was a Lubavitch. And I called him up right away and I said, listen, this is my niece. I want to help all the way. I want to be there for her all the way. And you speak to the head of Chevra Kadisha in Monsey and you ask all questions, because he was concerned that when we come to Israel, if you don't do it in a Chevra Kadisha that is recognized in Israeli Batei Kvarot, you have to redo everything again. And this is a Inui Laneshama. It's an affliction for the soul. So I said, talk to him and you'll see. We've done a lot of people buried and were buried in Israel. So he spoke to Ephraim Pessin and he gave him all the detail, and then he agreed to send her to Monsey. So now she's in Monsey, and I know that I'm going to take care of my niece one more time. And I really prepared myself. But it was very hard again. I was glad I wanted to do it. I wanted that pizza for her because that was for me a closure. That was for me one more care for her, for me to do to her, to be there for her, to provide for her everything she needed. And I did it. And then what happened is that in the hospital, when she passed away, her husband was with her. And her son, the one who is bar mitzvah, never left her. He said that all the time. At one point, he was taken to have breakfast in the morning. And when he left, my other niece from France was a very close cousin of hers. She said there was a flock of bird that landed on her window when he left for breakfast. And when they came back, there was one bird left. And now we go to Israel. We all travel to Israel. She was buried in Israel. And they asked, the Rabbi Kadisha asked for her face to be uncovered and identified. They always do that. So somebody who knew her can say, yes, this is the person. And then they continue with the ritual of burial. So when we arrived to this open space, it's a shul, with a roof, but no walls, there was this little bird flying, one bird flying in that place in Israel. One in Westchester, one in Israel. And I said, this bird is a message. It's like a symbolic of the Shama telling me, maybe thanking me or acknowledging and knowing that she's in a good place, this bird. And to tell you how powerful this is, we continue, we go to the Shiva, back, we started Shiva in Israel for 3 days, we come back to New York. And there is this woman who comes for Shiva, beautiful, tall, blonde woman. She's not part of the Jewish community, it's obvious. And she's holding herself like this, and she could see she's very upset and sad. So I went up to her and I told her, are you a friend of Michelle? That was my niece. She says, yes, I was a hairdresser. She would go to the hospital and do her hair to make her feel good. And I said to her, I couldn't tell her anything about Jewish stuff. So I told her the story of the bird, and she was so comforted by the presence. And what I want to recommend to the group, if you can do that, is in therapy, I learned a modality called Reiki, which is really energy work. And energy work works, you can work different parts of the body and release or heal different parts of the body. When I finish doing a Reiki session on the person's body, I have a lot of flashes, because massage therapy is a person is also on the table under your gentle care, and you take care of them, you figure things out, you make them feel better, so on and so forth. When I finish a session of Reiki, if I do a whole hour of Reiki, I do it on myself. I flash myself, and I don't incorporate anything that happened on that table. This is not my story. I've learned to detach. That is a story, and it's not my story. And I do it like this. The same thing I find in Chevra Kadisha. I'm definitely present to do the work in humility and always open to learn something new and to be there in a good way, in the most caring way. And afterwards, I just flash everything, because I don't need to carry this with me. It's not what Hashem wants for me, to be so affected, because if you're so affected by the work, then you become weak and you cannot do the work properly. So this is what I recommend, is just have an intention, because the Reiki is all about healing hands and intention. You close your eyes and you just cover your hand and all from head to toe, front and back, and you just let it go. You take a breath, a deep one. I want to teach you the breath of life. Since we talk about Chevra Kadisha, I want to teach you the breath of life. So everybody put your hand on your belly and breathe into your belly. First your belly, and then I'll stand. So you see what happened to my fingers when I breathe into my belly. So now I have no air. I went straight to the belly, no lungs. Then I continue with the lungs. And then I hold the breath. Holding the breath is very powerful, because holding the breath is like knowing that you don't have to rush. You're just there in the moment. You hold the breath. Nobody dies from holding the breath. And then you release the breath very slowly. If you breathe to the count of 5, you release to the count of 15. And if you can hold it for 10, that's wonderful. So you breathe in your belly. Everybody breathe in your belly. Hold the breath. Breathe out through your nose. 50 seconds. when you're at the end of your breath, you want to contract all your inner organ and your buttocks at the same time. And then you let go. It's a conscious breath. You cannot breathe like that unless you stop everything and you do it. So I want to wish the women of Chava Kadisha wonderful Atzlacha in their work and continuing to do the good work. And don't forget to take a breath, because your breath is your life.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlene. Thank you so, so much. Thank you for sharing. It's a lot. You shared a lot with us. Thank you. Thank you. So we have a few minutes, 4 minutes till 1 o'clock Eastern time. If anybody wants to make a comment or say something quickly, or any thoughts, any reflections, anything from somebody that we haven't heard from. Anybody have anything they'd like to unmute themselves and say, just to join? I think this has been a real opportunity to meet some of the ladies that are in our group, as was the last presentation we had with 4 women. And let's keep doing this. So if anybody would like to unmute and just say hello or introduce yourself or make a comment, please do. Somebody who hasn't yet spoken.
Hi, my name is Elaine Rappaport Bass from Allentown, PA. And we do not, those of us who do the taharas, most of us come in our separate cars. And what we have, what I have started is that before we go into the room, we all stand there for a minute or two, very quietly, and we do the deep breathing, and we just can make ourselves throw away all thoughts of the outside world and pray for ourselves to be focused for just doing this mitzvah. And it's such a beautiful feeling. And we walk into that room then ready to do the beautiful mitzvah. So it's something I feel good about hearing everyone else talk about something that I thought I made up, but it's a good feeling. Also, I wanted to say thank you. My sister-in-law was shot and killed in her home many years ago when she was only 33. And knowing that at that time I was not doing taharas, and I didn't know if they did it right or not. And I was worried after I started doing it, was it done right? But knowing that her neshama, that she went right to heaven, I feel good knowing that. I didn't know that when that someone dies tragically, a tahara is not really needed, because their beautiful soul is already on the way. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you for your words. I'm so sorry about your sister.
May I say something very quickly?
Who are you? Where are you?
I'm Dorothy, also Rafaela. I'm in Svat, Israel. And I just want to say, you know, I look at the mace and I think, who is this person that merited to have a tahara? Because as we know, so many don't. And just before I left Los Angeles, before my aliyah, well, not before the COVID thing, we did a tahara, and the woman had, you know, we cut off the bracelet, and she had a metal tag on the bracelet, and I put it aside. And when we were putting her in the aron, I pulled the tag and I looked at it and I saw crematoria number whatever, and realized that this woman is very special. And they're all so special that we're able to do something, that she was saved from crematorium and she was brought to us, and we got to escort her, as Tova Hinda says, we got to escort her out. And it infuses me every time I do a tahara that this is a very special person. And it helps me get through the tahara. If it's a difficult tahara, it gets me through it more easily as it can be, because I realize that they're so special. And it's such an honor. And thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. I think it's true. I think it's also, some of the presenters have said how special it is to be with other women who have the same desire to escort our sisters. So there's something special about the other women that we're with, that we are honored to be with. Anybody else have one last comment before we end our
I just
meeting?
want to, can I jump in? Can you hear me? It's Rhonda in Toronto. Yeah. Thank you so much to everybody. I'm so moved and I feel so connected to everybody. So much of what you said, because the midwifery aspect of it, but just privately bringing in the intentionality. And I mean, I took something from everybody. My own personal journey is also as a nurse and labor and delivery nurse. And I really appreciated the aspects of the medical, the professional, the personal, and the intentionality. Like I just see this growing. I feel like it's just beyond words right now. So thank you, Alyssa. There's so much to share, but I just wanted to add that all of you spoke to my heart so much. And Alyssa, thank you for organizing us, because I'm going to go back and look at all the notes and try to be focused. And it's like grabbing hands with all of you around the world in all the painful times, and hearing your hearts and your tears and being real about it is really the part that's so authentic. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rhonda. I'm going to end the meeting now, because I like to start on time and end on time and not keep you from your busy lives. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for sharing. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for doing the work you do. Thank you for being part of this community. And
thank you, Alyssa, for doing this. It's extraordinary.
Tiskula mitzvahs to everybody, and we'll stay in touch. And
Thank you very much.
Looking for the next.
Thank you, Lisa. Enjoy your few days meditation.
Thank you so much.
You deserve it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Thank you. Thank you for organizing this.
Of course.
Amazing. Thank you. Wherever you are.